You're listening to Art Affairs, episode 79. Today I'll be talking to Meagan Magpie Rodgers. So my name is Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. Art Affairs is my attempt at shining a spotlight on the many wonderful people that make up this amazing art community, featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, telling their stories. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes, at artaffairs.podcast.com, but the best way to stay plugged in is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're really enjoying the show and want to help support what I'm doing here in an even bigger way, check out the Art Affairs Patreon. Not only does it give you an opportunity to help keep the show going, but there are several community-oriented benefits as well, like getting early access to episodes and suggesting questions for upcoming guests. You can find all the information about that at patreon.com/artaffairs. You can also connect with the show on Instagram at Art Affairs Podcast. All right, so today's guest is artist Meagan Magpie Rodgers. Meagan creates beautifully somber paintings and drawings, often labeled as dark surrealism. We talk about some of the childhood experiences that have contributed to the themes that she's worked with over the years, how she's dealt with burnout and creative struggle, her brand new solo show in Australia, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Meagan Rodgers. Meagan, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, so let's dive into your background a little bit. And I know that you grew up in Corona, California, which I believe, according to Google Maps, is 50 miles-ish southeast of Los Angeles. So what was that area like when you were growing up?
It's a pretty small town. Not a lot to do, really. I spent most of my time in Riverside, which was just a few minutes away from me. So I went to high school there. I ended up switching to a high school over in Norco, but I met my husband and a lot of my friends at the high school that I attended in Riverside, and I would do the Riverside art walks and just spend a lot of time there, more so than Corona, honestly.
Being as close as it was to LA, did you spend much time in LA proper?
Not as much as I would have liked to, not living close to LA. I really wish that I would have taken advantage of it more while it was near. But yeah, I did have I tried to go to gallery openings and stuff when I could. But yeah, I definitely should have taken advantage of it more.
And so what kind of work did your parents do? Anything creative or artistic?
So my dad used to teach graphics design, and the company that he ended up retiring from, he started off as a graphics designer there and then kind of worked its way up to director of operations. And then my mom always worked in staffing, and she was also the director of operations there. I'm fortunate in that my parents have always appreciated art and have been very supportive of my work. They're just much more business-minded than I am, so they've always encouraged fine art to be something that I do on the side of some sort of 9-to-5 job, to which they can finally say, "I told you so," as I'm realizing that is actually what I want.
So did they foster that kind of artistic mentality in you when you were growing up? How much exposure to the arts did they give you as a kid?
I grew up watching a lot of Tim Burton movies, and they always appreciated that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I think that my brother was my biggest influence artistically, but my parents were always supportive and could appreciate the arts, and more so through movies and stuff, I guess.
And is that, I guess you mentioned your brother, is that how you first became interested in making art yourself? Was kind of seeing that in your brother and then some of the artistic work that your father did? Yeah.
So my brother was my biggest inspiration growing up. He taught me a lot, and I was very influenced by his work starting out. I really don't know where I'd be as an artist today without him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess one thing that I read and I encountered when I was, reading up on you a bit was that you mentioned in several places that you had paranormal experiences in the house that you grew up in. So but that's like the only thing that I could find out. Like you didn't speak much more on it. So tell me about that. Like what happened? What was the paranormal experience?
I feel like you probably read that from an older, I don't know where I mentioned that. I don't talk about it as much because I know that a lot of people don't believe in that kind of stuff. So then I just feel like, I don't know, but I definitely experienced some very strange and unexplainable things. All my friends and family that would come to visit us can vouch for that house having been a very strange and creepy place. It wasn't even like an old house or anything. It was like built in the 90s, I think, but there was just something about it. Like really strange things would happen.
Yeah, I feel like, my aunt, when I was growing up, had a really old house so I grew up in the Dallas area, and there's a suburb of Dallas called Weatherford, and she lived there, and she always really liked old things, and so she filled her house with all these old things, and I swear that house was haunted. Like it had to have been.
Maybe that's what it was, because we did have a lot of antiques and stuff.
I wonder if that maybe was the vessel for whatever you were encountering. Was some of the old things that you had in your house.
Yeah, I could totally see that being the cause. We actually had an experience with like a Santeria pot that we acquired, and we didn't know that it was a Santeria pot. So my dad used to own a junk removal business, and he found just like this old pot filled with tools like melted inside of it in an attic one day that he was clearing out. He did that on the side, his junk removal business. So yeah, he took it home and didn't really think anything of it. He just thought it was like this cool old pot, and he like cleaned all the tools that were in it of all the wax that was melted inside, and just like put the tools back into the pot and then left it next to the fireplace for a few years. Then, when we moved to Tennessee, the pot came with us, and it ended up next to the fireplace in their current house. And last year, a lot of really unfortunate things happened in my family, and my dad was just like looking up how to know if you've been cursed. And he saw on the list finding a mysterious pot with things melted in it, and then it clicked, and he found out that he had a Santeria pot in his house for many years. And upon learning that, we made a lot of connections around acquiring and handling this pot, where like we kind of suspect that maybe it really was cursed and did some damage.
Wow.
I don't fully believe it, but it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So what happened to that once y'all kind of came to that realization?
Yeah. So we buried it like a few blocks away from the house.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually put an Easter egg of the pot in one of my paintings for my show coming up.
Nice. So you really seem like a creative child, making clothes and toys and sculptures. Did you already have that sense that you wanted to be an artist professionally, or did you have ambitions to do like other things as a kid?
I think that I just knew that I wanted to pursue something creative. So I didn't know like what avenue I wanted to pursue exactly, but yeah, because like I liked singing and doing all sorts of things, but I think mostly like visual arts was something that I gravitated to, and I would just like make a lot of weird things out of whatever I could find around the house, and like make my own toys and sculptures out of hot glue or tinfoil, or just like make clothes out of like my mom's old clothes, like cut them up and make new stuff.
Didn't you also like sell your art in middle school? I read that somewhere. Like in middle school, as young as middle school, you were already like taking commissions at such a young age. Like, tell me about that. How did you become so ambitious at that young?
I'm not sure. Probably just because my parents are so business minded, and but I don't know. I started selling like I would draw people's binder covers and stuff, and I would make bows and sell those. or just any little thing. I was making like bows out of soda cans for a while and selling those, which turned out to be dangerous. They're very sharp. But yeah, I just dabbled in a lot of different random things.
At the point where you were ready to, graduating high school, ready to move on to, to college, I know you went to Riverside Community College for a while and studied under Jeff Soto, which is, obviously a peer now.
Yeah. Jeff Soto is awesome.
Apparently he had a big impact on you. Tell me about that. Like, what was it like having Jeff as a teacher?
He was definitely my favorite art teacher. I feel really lucky to have been taught by him, and I still implement a lot of the things that he's taught me. And after, being taught by him, like my husband and I became friends with him and his family. And yeah, the Sotos are just like really great people. What did you think was the most rewarding aspect of your time there, or the most important lesson that you learned that's kind of stuck with you since? I still use like all of the paints and everything that he instructed us to get. And he taught me how to like mix my own black paint. And, I don't know. I use a lot of the same techniques and everything. And it was also great being taught under somebody like so talented and creative. And I guess, how do you feel about your time overall at Riverside? Just the experience of learning in an academic environment like that. So I didn't like complete college or anything. I didn't finish school. Art classes were the only classes that I didn't totally struggle in. I don't know. I started college not really knowing where I was going to go with it. And I just wanted to take some art classes to better my skills and everything, but I didn't really know what I was going to do after college. So I just kind of fell off with it eventually. Would you have liked to, like, in retrospect, looking back, are there aspects of a traditional art training or art school that you wish you had gotten, or wish you had the opportunity to have? Yeah, I definitely wish that I would have completed my my art training, at least at the community college. I never went to like an art school or anything like that, and I don't know that I necessarily regret having not done that. But I don't know, I feel like I did miss out on a lot of information and a lot of connections having not done that. Maybe I would know what I was doing a little better now if I had. No telling. After your time in school, or even during while you were attending class, were you doing other kinds of work to like pay the bills? Yeah, so I've had a lot of I've worked a lot of odd jobs. I'm trying to think of my first. At first, I worked like with my grandma at a staffing company, and then I worked at a warehouse for a little bit. I worked at a taxidermy studio for a while. I also, I can't give away too much. I signed a disclosure that I could not, but I worked in a warehouse, where it was like a production line of artists creating work for another artist to like sign when we were done. And then, he would, sell his work through galleries and cruise ships. Wow. I think I've had a couple of people on that have done that sort of work earlier in their career. That's interesting. So I wanted to pause at the taxidermy studio. What did you do at the taxidermy studio? That's fascinating to me. So I started working there with my sister-in-law. I don't remember how exactly. I think that, he worked next to my husband's dad's shop. And he had been telling us that he was there, and I knew that I had an interest in taxidermy, and so did my sister-in-law. So we both just went over there one day and got to know him, and he said that he would hire us as apprentices. So we were just like paid apprentices. We just kind of got to work whenever we wanted to, and learn about taxidermy. And I feel like I learned a lot and nothing at all, because I still couldn't create a piece of taxidermy by myself, like maybe a small animal, but I would struggle and it would probably come out terribly. It is a very complicated art. Yeah. And not giving away, definitely respecting the confidential disclosure that you have to abide by. But what did you learn any lessons from that time working in another artist's studio? Are there things that you took away from that experience that you incorporated into your own practice in some way? I think for a while I thought that I didn't want to work for anybody else doing anything artistic after that job. Are the tools, like the mediums and everything that we would use there were very different from what I practice with, along with like the styles and the style of the work. It was very different from what I pursue. So like I didn't learn a whole lot in that area, but after that job, I felt like I didn't want to spend my creative energy working for another person.
Sure. So you learned that that's not what you want to do. It was basically, that was the lesson.
Yeah.
And so was it difficult? I mean, I guess to balance working all of these different jobs while you were also trying to develop your own, artistic voice and build up what ultimately became your art practice?
I guess so. But I'm just kind of like a workaholic. So like whenever I was home, I was painting. Like I was always making art when I was home, and I did enjoy it for a really long time.
What, I guess, made you feel comfortable enough to give that part-time work up and focus, entirely on your own art?
So when we moved to Tennessee is when I stopped working at the art production place, and I started doing just like I got a job at a club as a shots girl, okay. and I liked how much money I could make in a short amount of time, and then still have time to go home and do my art the rest of the time. And so, because I only worked 2 days a week, so that allowed me a lot of time to focus on my art and everything. So, yeah, I was probably doing art full time for about 2 years. So at first I was balancing art with being a shots girl on the weekend. And then I eventually stopped doing that and just focused on my art. And that's when I learned that I probably don't want to do art full time again.
Yeah. I guess what was that stressful to take that leap? Was it the stress of having your entire well-being kind of connected to your art, your creative output?
Yeah, I found that I was just trying to create too much, like quantity over quality, all that, and working through burnout because I needed to make the money. I feel like it's something that I want to just do on the side of my main source of income from now on.
That makes sense, and I think that is a theme that I've heard several times in the course of the show. Just decoupling the financial burden from the creative side of what you want to do. It kind of untethers you from that. So in the early days of, you moved to Tennessee, you started focusing more full time on your work. How did you start getting your work noticed by galleries and start making some of those relationships in the gallery world?
So I think the first gallery that I showed at, if it wasn't the Riverside Art Parlor, which I had personal connections to the people that worked there, then it was I think Hive Gallery in Los Angeles, and I reached out to them and I participated in a group show there. And then everywhere I've shown since then, I've been lucky that they've reached out to me. I don't know if I think they usually find me through Instagram or through other galleries that I've shown with. But yeah, that's usually how I get connected to them.
So you mentioned Instagram, and I'm kind of curious, what presence has social media had in your career as an artist? Is that something that you feel that you have to put a lot of energy into?
Yeah. So starting off, social media was integral to getting my work out there. And I think that mostly Instagram is what I would use. And I think that it was a very different place at the time. I used to spend a lot of time posting and I put a lot of energy into my Instagram and everything. And I've really fallen off with it recently, though. I think that it's a very different place now, and I just couldn't keep up with the pressures of constantly posting on there. And
there's TikTok and there's Threads and there's all these other options. So where do you even focus on? I mean, you can't do all of them, it's hard to do all of them.
definitely.
I guess, would you have any advice to somebody that's starting out today to how to navigate all of these different things? You have all these different places where you could put your energy to. What would you recommend people focus on?
I think focusing on finding your personal style and getting to a place where you're really happy with your own work before putting it in front of others and seeing what they think is important, so that people are like developing their work without that bias and everything. And then to get their work out there. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've done things pretty unconventionally. Like I moved away from LA and I don't go to gallery openings anymore like I probably should. But yeah, definitely like posting on social media as much as you can, while trying not to let it discourage you when it doesn't go well, is really helpful in this day and age.
You mentioned, moving away from LA, so I wanted to explore that a little bit. I think you moved to Tennessee in 2016. Like, what motivated that
I think so.
Move away from, where you grew up, effectively?
I never saw myself leaving California. My parents had been considering moving for a few years, but they weren't going to move if I didn't. Mm-hmm. So my dad decided to go on a road trip for a whole month just to explore new parts of the country, and told me to come with him and see if I would be willing to move anywhere else. And I said, I'm not moving, but I'll go on a road trip with you. And so, yeah, we explored all over the country for a month. And once we visited Chattanooga, Tennessee, I was like, okay, maybe I'll move. I really love it here.
What was it about you that, because you seemed pretty confident that you weren't going to leave LA or Southern California.
Was.
So what about Tennessee and Chattanooga convinced you to change your mind?
I think just like the nature, it's just so beautiful. There's something extremely charming about it. It doesn't have it's nothing compared to like LA in terms of like art opportunities or anything, but I knew that I could always ship my work to other places and maybe eventually find my place with my art here at some point. I don't know. I still haven't really, but yeah, it's just a beautiful, charming place. There was just a magic about it.
Nice. And did that change in scenery have any impact on your work? Like, did you absorb some of that energy into, what you ultimately created? Did you take inspiration from it?
Definitely. I'm very inspired by nature, and I just remember being so enamored by the scenery here and all the wildlife and everything. And it definitely came through in my work when I moved here.
Nice. So overall, having lived there, I guess it's 7 years now, roughly.
I think so.
Is that home now? Do you think you'll stay there indefinitely?
I think so. I would love to get to a point where my husband and I can work remotely and spend extended amounts of time in California or wherever else, so that we still have family and friends in California, so we miss it a lot. So it would be really nice if we could find a way to split time.
Awesome. So before we dive into the themes that you explore in your work itself, I have to ask you about Magpie. What is the origin of that? Is that actually your middle name, or is that a moniker?
No.
Like what? I'm super curious about that.
It's literally just my parents called me Magpie when I was little, and I like birds.
That's great. And it speaks to, I guess, the influence of nature that you just spoke about. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So talking about your work a little bit more, one of the most prominent motifs, I think, is the figures will often have, or almost always have, detached jaws, and whether that detached jaw is also in the frame or just not present at all, it's almost always the case. So what's the origin of that motif, and maybe speak a little bit about the meaning behind it?
So I feel like I'm trying to portray something that I can't quite find the words for, and I think that's part of the meaning behind the jawless subjects, like they're communicating something without actually speaking.
And has that changed over time? Has that been an evolving, theme for you?
Yeah, I guess so. Especially since like reintroducing the jaw, in some pieces. Yeah, I guess that it's kind of like an evolving thing.
And how is, I mean, I guess, how is that reintroduction of the jaw changed the theme or evolved it?
I think that the jaw is kind of like, I usually implement it in a way where the subject is, sorry. It's a newer theme in my work, and I think that I'm still trying to put words to it. I don't know.
No, that makes sense. Do you find that some of the themes that you do explore are just kind of very intuitive, and you don't really know what their purpose is yet, and then kind of realize it later?
Definitely. So like I try to give form to intangible concepts like inner demons and mental illness and love, loss, but I don't always have some big meaning in mind. Rather, I come to execute something because I thought it would look interesting or something. And then, then I often find meaning in it later.
Once you do kind of recognize what that meaning is, do you then build on that? Like, is it like an aha moment where you're like, oh, that's what that means, and let me explore that deeper? Yeah,
I think so.
In addition to the lack of jaws, you're almost always focusing on the feminine figure. I guess, why do you think that has been your primary focus, over the years? Is it just because these stories are about you and that's the best, subject to tell those stories?
Yeah, that's really it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And beyond, the immediate scene of the piece that you're painting, is there a larger story around the work that you make, like through these characters and the symbols, which I want to talk a little bit more about the symbols, but through these characters and symbols, are you trying to create a narrative in some way?
It's really just like the narrative of my life's experiences. So it's nothing too specific. It's just kind of like a bunch of jumbled up aspects of my life experience, I guess.
Through that, is it important to you that people that are seeing your work kind of grasp that story that you're trying to tell in the way that you're trying to tell it, or does that not matter as much as just getting it out of you?
Yeah, I definitely love hearing other people's takes, and I think that it's so cool that people can draw different conclusions about my work. There's this account on Instagram called Dead of Night Poetry that's used some of my work as prompts for poetry contests, and it's really amazing to hear all the different interpretations.
Have you ever been surprised by somebody's interpretation of a piece that you made?
Yeah, definitely, because they'll interpret it in a way where I would have never thought of it that way. So,
no, that's amazing. And so, like, your use of symbols, one of the frogs, for instance, seems to have a particular meaning or particular importance throughout, the course of your portfolio. Do you feel that your use of symbols is a very intentional choice, or is it more like, do you put a lot of thought up front into how you're going to abstract meaning through these symbols, or is it more organic and intuitive in the same way that some of the themes are more intuitive?
Yeah, I definitely think that some of the repeating themes come from, like the frogs. They're kind of like my spirit animal. I feel like they show up during times of transition in my life. Like when I first moved to Chattanooga, and I visited the Choo Choo Hotel. It's like this this local landmark. There was just an inordinate amount of frogs everywhere. And I just remember that making me so happy, and shortly after that deciding to move here. And I just feel like frogs show up during like transition periods like that. They have done so repeatedly throughout my life. And I just really love frogs.
And so what do the frogs, I guess, represent to you? You said they're kind of your spirit animals, so they a part of your inner being, I guess? I
guess. Like when I paint them, I usually am trying to depict like joy. They're one of the happier themes in my work, I think.
You've been very vocal in interviews that I've read about your bipolar disorder and how it's kind of participated in your art practice over the years. Can you share a little bit, I guess, about how that aspect of your life has contributed to the themes? I know that one of the ways that you described frogs in one of the interviews I read was that the frog was one part of that story, and then some of the other darker, beings are the other part of that. So I guess help me understand how those kind of relate to one another.
So yeah, I have some kind of a disorder. I don't know if it's bipolar or I'm looking into other things now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I might have something else going on. I'm gonna be looking into that soon. But yeah, I definitely experience I definitely experience things in extremes, and so I think the frogs would be like the elated side, and then like the demons, etc., would be like the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, I think people can definitely relate to that. I mean, I can at least. I guess. Do you feel that having this kind of creative outlet to sort of speak about some of these, I guess, inner feelings has helped you navigate it in some way, or contextualize it?
It's definitely cathartic for me. I don't know that it helps me to make sense of what I'm experiencing, but it is an outlet for sure.
And you said in, I guess, interviews several years ago that your primary aim, and you said this a little bit earlier, just how you're trying to capture feelings and memories that you're feeling through your work, and not necessarily able to identify what that theme is in the moment, but you're just kind of getting it out of you. And, you said that one of the biggest, like the negative feelings are one of the bigger impact, one of the more impactful aspects of those kind of collection of feelings, which I thought was really interesting to articulate, because I see that as well, just personally. Like the negative feelings seem to be heavier, grief and pain and loss, those negative emotions seem a little bit more powerful in the moment, and so I think the way that you kind of explained it was that those are the ones that tend to manifest a bit more in your work just because of that. So
definitely.
So I guess I don't know if that's just me kind of recognizing that observation, but why do you think it is that, I guess, those negative feelings have that kind of lasting presence?
I think that I'm just like really drawn to like the dark aesthetic, and I tend to, I guess, kind of romanticize darkness. I guess because that's kind of like where I am mentally a lot. So I guess that I just try to romanticize it, make the best of it while I'm there. Sure. I don't know.
How do you, I mean, you mentioned kind of romanticizing darkness, and your work often gets the label of dark surrealist. That's like a descriptor that I see used a lot. How do you feel about that as a label, I guess, for your work? And I guess more generally, like, how do you feel about labels?
I think that definitely best describes my work.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. And how do you usually like arrive at your ideas for new works? Like, let's say you're sitting down and painting. You mentioned that you're doing it a bit more part-time now, so that it's not the primary source of income. So when you do have time to paint, how do you approach ideation and developing your ideas? Do you have like a daily sketch routine or other kinds of brainstorming activities?
So it's really changed over the years. I used to sketch constantly. But I don't know. I think that, I definitely don't sketch nearly as much as I used to. Usually I just I'll have an idea pop into my head, usually when I'm, just like in my feels or just laying in bed and have a fleeting idea that pops up, and I need to just write it down real quick and then revisit it later and see if anything comes of it. My process has just changed a lot over the years.
And so when you have these kind of moments where you think of something, you want to capture it, write it down, do you ever encounter times when you struggle to make sense of what that thing was you wrote down? Because I feel like that would be my problem, is I write some like rough note, and then I come back to it the next day and I'm like, what the hell was I even thinking? Like, you know?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Probably like 90% of the stuff in my notes, like I'll revisit it later and be like, what the hell was I trying to say? This is not usable.
And so how do you explore those ideas? The ones that you do remember, or at least it sparks something in you when you're trying to explore it further and developing like a composition to reflect that idea. How do you approach that? Do you just kind of draw sketches that are more and more refined and build the composition that way?
Yeah, I think that having access to Procreate on the iPad has actually eliminated my sketch process, because like it's I can do things so much easier on the iPad now. So usually I'll just like do a really rough thumbnail sketch there in Procreate, and then just start taking my images and compiling things together and create an image as close to the final product as I'm trying to achieve as possible, and then paint or draw it from there.
Okay. Is there an element of like research that goes in at some point where either you're researching some of the themes that you want to explore or collecting like photo references? Does that take place?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So I try to take my own photo references as much as I can, but sometimes there's just like elements that I can't capture myself. So like if I need to find a frog reference, etc., I'll go online and just kind of have to composite images together and to create the final product in Procreate.
Once you get that that Procreate image to the point where you want to actually move on to painting, is everything pretty locked down at that point, or is there still does it still evolve further as you're painting it?
So it's pretty locked down at that point. It helps me to feel in control of the painting, which helps me a lot, because painting can become very stressful for me if I don't have like a really clear idea of what I'm trying to achieve. So it's definitely alleviated a lot of the anxiety from my process. But sometimes I'll reach a point where I'm like, oh, I think that it would benefit from this being added in or something like that. So I'll just like take a picture of the painting or drawing and put it back into Procreate and draw on top of that and see.
Okay, so you make edits, you kind of go back and forth between digital and painting as you iterate on it.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Do you typically focus on like one piece at a time until it's entirely done, or do you kind of bounce back and forth between several pieces?
I usually focus on one piece at a time, and for my upcoming show, I try to do 2 pieces at a time to see how that went, because I know that works for a lot of people. And at first I liked it, but then I found that I just hated that I wasn't getting an end result quickly enough, because I just felt like, I just had 2 incomplete works when I could have had 1 complete work, and that probably would have felt better.
That's serotonin hit. You need to get that along the way. That makes sense. So, acrylic is the primary paint medium that you use. What is it that you like about painting with acrylic opposed to something else like oil or watercolor?
I think that I've played with acrylics more than anything else. So like I've really gotten to know it well. I'd still like to explore other mediums, but I like that the instant gratification that comes with acrylics, like the drying time and all that.
Okay, and I guess graphite is the other medium that you'll use a lot for your drawings. I guess what plays into the decision of whether a piece is going to be painted with acrylic or drawn using graphite? Usually
it's a matter of how much detail is going into the piece, and would it benefit to be a really high contrast graphite image. Like if it's going to be pretty simple and high contrast, then I feel like it translates well in graphite. But yeah, I've been leaning into painting more recently. I think that's usually what I prefer in terms of end results.
So prefer in terms of end results, what do you enjoy doing more?
Honestly, I like drawing better, but like it's more fun and I think it's easier and it's quicker, but nothing beats the end result of painting for me.
Are there any mediums that you'd like to explore someday that you haven't had a chance to?
So I'm exploring sculpture a bit now. I've dabbled in it before, but I'm gonna, for the first time, I'm gonna have a sculpture, in a gallery this August, and I'm working on it now. And I would also like to, so I'd like to keep exploring sculpture and also, maybe dabble in like gouaches.
What kind of, what medium is the sculpture that you're working on in?
I'm just using air dry clay.
Okay. Nice.
And it's been really fun to work with.
Yeah. So I guess shifting gears a little bit before, we dive into your new show, because I want to spend some more time on that. And you touched on it a little bit earlier when we were talking about how you stopped, doing art full time because, you had feelings of burnout. And I know that you took some time off last year to kind of recover from burnout, like 6 months or something. What happened that kind of led to that, taking a break and stepping back? And I guess burnout in general, is it something that you feel that comes up from time to time?
So, yeah, I really just think just turning my passion into a business has really put a strain on my relationship with art. And I think it led to the worst burnout I've experienced last year. I went about 6 months without creating anything. And the idea of doing so became so scary and awful to me. I think I needed that break though, because once I forced myself to start working on my show coming up at Bain Art in August, I fell in love again and haven't wanted to put the brush down since.
I guess, how did you recognize that you were kind of feeling these feelings of burnout? I guess, was it hard to see that in the midst of it as you were feeling it? What made you kind of come to terms with that feeling?
I think that I had been feeling it for a long time, but last year was just a really difficult year in general, and kind of forced me to stop creating for a time. And then once I did stop creating, like I lost all momentum and just did not want to pick it back up again.
And like at the beginning of that period, did you like specify an amount of time, like I'm going to take 6 months off, or was it just, man, I need time off, and then you just come back when you felt better?
Yeah, I just came back because I had to, because I needed to work on this show that I've had coming up, and I couldn't wait any longer. And as soon as I started working on this show, like I felt like I was falling in love with art again. I was like, why did I ever stop doing this? But yeah, I really do think that I needed that break.
Yeah. So was it difficult to kind of get back into a steady routine once you did start back up, just feeling that process out again?
Not really. I don't know what it is. Like, I'm either like really in the headspace to make art or really not. And no in between. So like once I started and I was enjoying it, like I quickly developed a momentum. And
On the other side of that experience, are there like steps that you've taken to try to avoid that sort of thing happening again? Just any adjustments that you've made to the way that you work?
No, but I have plans for that now. So like I don't want to overexert myself anymore. And after this show, I'm probably gonna like slow down a little bit, not to the extent of losing all momentum again. Like I've got a few group shows coming up, but I probably won't do another solo show for a while. Like not until my kid's a little older and I have like my day job figured out, and I'm probably going to go back to school, honestly.
Okay. It's sort of like, what I'm hearing is that you when you were focusing on your art full time, it was like one extreme, and then you took a break and that was like another extreme, and now you're trying to find that happy balance, that happy medium in between.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's hard for me.
I mean, I think that's healthy. That's good that you're recognizing that you need to kind of to do that and take that time to find that right balance.
Yeah.
I read that you had like one of the things that you started up after you started back was a weekly like art night at your home with friends of yours, which I think is such a great way to kind of make that experience more community driven or more comfortable. I guess, how did that come about, and what has it contributed to your, I guess, enjoyment of making?
So yeah, art nights have been amazing. I recently found that I work better next to someone, like, just makes for good company and, accountability. And, so like at the start of my show, I knew that I needed like an extra push to, get me going and keep me going. So I thought of starting, weekly art nights at my house so that I could have, accountability partners to work alongside me, and push me to keep going. And that's really helped me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess, what is it about community, I think, that just having people around you to motivate you? Is it a motivating factor?
I don't really know what it is. There's just something so comforting in working next to the people that I love. It makes art can be like a really isolating thing. And but yeah, when I'm working with friends or with my husband, it makes it a lot less daunting and lonely.
Excellent. That's awesome. So hopefully you keep that up and that's a bigger, continues to be a part of what you do.
Yeah, I hope so.
So let's talk about your new show. I know that you have a new show coming up. August 19th, I believe, is the date, which is the Saturday after this episode that we're recording should debut. The show is titled Shadows in the Fog. So what can you tell me about this new body of work?
So I told them that I wanted my show to be called Shadows in the Fog and then immediately changed my mind, but I don't think that it's been updated on the website on their site yet. Right.
So what's the new name?
I changed it to In a Fog.
Okay.
I felt like Shadows in the Fog was a little bit too on the nose. So, but In a Fog basically follows the highs and lows I've experienced in the last couple of years since becoming a mom. The pieces depict the gloom of postpartum depression and disorienting aspect of this trying yet beautiful time. It also illustrates the shadows and nagging inner voices I've encountered while attempting to adapt without losing myself along the way.
Did you develop that theme of the show first and then kind of work within those boundaries, or did you start just working and then at some point kind of recognize what the theme had organically become?
Yeah, I think that it was just kind of like an organic thing. The only thing that I knew that I wanted to do with this show was that I wanted everything to be in a foggy setting. So like the whole show's like kind of foggy and gloomy and wet. And I really wanted that. Like I've literally been in a fog since being pregnant. I feel like, not so much this year. I feel like I'm finally out of that. But yeah, I felt like that was a really good element in capturing the last 2 years of my life.
Sure. Is that the way that you kind of organically arrived at that theme? Is that usually how you work, or do you kind of plan your themes out, or does that change, I guess, from show to show?
Usually it's just like a reflection of my mindset and experiences at the time, and they just kind of organically end up, I don't know, flowing together because of that. But it's not usually like a super intentional thing. It just sort of happens. With this one, they especially like go together because they're all in the same like gloomy environment, and that was the only thing that I really wanted to make sure that I had repeating in all of the pieces. But yeah, usually it's just kind of like an organic thing.
Okay. How long have you been working on this show? I've
been planning for it for like probably a couple years now, but mostly just like writing notes of ideas and stuff. I think that I started actually working on it. I feel like maybe November or December of last year. I'm not sure when exactly.
Okay. Is there a particular piece in the show that, challenged you maybe more than some of the others?
Usually like the painting process in general is like a really challenging thing for me. But for whatever reason, I didn't have a lot of difficulty with the show, like executing the show. Usually I have at least one mental breakdown per piece, but that wasn't really the case this time. I don't know. It was just, I had a really good time creating this show.
That's awesome. If that's a sign of success, then
yeah.
I don't know. I know that I saw on your Instagram that you've already shipped everything off, so I guess you probably know how many pieces there are going to be. How many pieces do you have in the show?
So there's going to be 9. I wanted to have more, but toddler life.
Awesome. Will you be going out to Australia when the show opens?
Yeah, I'll be visiting with a few of my friends. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited.
Have you been to Australia before?
I have not.
Okay. Nice. Anything else that you have coming up that you'd want to put on people's radars? Events, print releases, stuff like that?
Not really. I mean, I do have stuff coming up, but not in the near future. I do plan on doing more print releases, but I haven't decided what and when exactly yet.
Awesome. Well, on that note, where can people find you online to kind of keep up with this as you put more stuff out?
I think I'm just the same username on everything that I'm on. I think that I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I'm on Threads, but I haven't posted anything yet. I don't know if I will, but I'm on there. And I'm on TikTok as well. Let me double check. I'm pretty sure that it's just magpie.rodgers with a D for all of my usernames.
How do you like TikTok for what you do there?
Yeah, I did confirm that is my username for everything. I have been enjoying TikTok. I had a lot of luck with my first video for some reason, but not a lot of luck with the videos I've posted since. But I'm trying not to take it too seriously.
It's fun. It's a fun platform. It's interesting how the algorithm really defines your experience.
Right. Definitely.
Last question, and this is something that I like to ask everybody. Who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
I asked my husband if I should say him, and he said no. But can I give you like a couple people? Sure. My best friend's an incredible photographer. She does like kind of like dark photography, and her name's Ava Reimer, and her Instagram is Gingered Spice. And then another artist that I'm really into right now is the painter Ray Klein. I don't know if I'm saying her name right, but I really love her work and would love to hear her speak about it.
Very cool. Great suggestions. I will include those in the show notes. Meagan, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Meagan. Having done this show for a few years now, I've found it fascinating, both the inconsistency, but even more so the consistency in the artist experience. There have been more than a few times on the show that we've talked about how artists have benefited from having a day job to go along with their art practice. Sometimes it's been just to change things up and explore the challenge of executing on someone else's ideas. But almost always, there's been this sense of relief that they get from not having their art practice be solely responsible for funding their entire life. All the way back from when I talked to Joe Cooper, Chris Mrozik, more recently with Alvaro Nadeo. While not universal, this has definitely been a topic that's come up a number of times. Some people have talked about how having their art practice fund their life can kind of create this expectation that can be creatively stifling. But what I found interesting here, talking with Meagan, is that she sort of needs it so that she doesn't overwork herself into creative burnout. It's a sort of release valve, if that makes sense, allowing her to enjoy her time creating when she does. I'm glad to see her trying to create that healthy balance that she needs. Her new show at Bain Art Gallery sounds like it's going to be a great body of work. Titled In a Fog, the show opens on August 19th, the weekend after this show should come out, at Bain Art Gallery in Australia. If you're in that area and can make it to the opening, Meagan will actually be in attendance as well. But regardless, be sure to reach out to the gallery to look at the show preview before the opening. And follow Meagan's Instagram to keep up with what she has coming up next. So thanks again to Meagan for joining me today, and thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support. And just a reminder, one big way you could help out if you're really enjoying the show would be to check out the show's Patreon. You can find all the details on patreon.com/artaffairs. And as always, you can contact me through my website at artaffairs.podcast.com or on Instagram at artaffairs.podcast. So until next time, be good to yourself and be good to each other.
you.